Happy Monday. Welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Mark Moyer doing some great things with his networking events. There's another event next week. Check out winagainacademy.com. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we have Rick Jones on the Wolff Den. Rick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, buddy. Glad to be here.
Rick is the founder of Fishbait Solutions, but tell everyone, give them a better introduction. Everyone can always do a better introduction than I can. So give them a quick introduction to who you are, and we'll get right into it.
Years ago, when Ronald Reagan said in a speech that he knew this is what the founding fathers meant because he was there, I'm an old guy. I've been around sports and entertainment for about 40 years now. Fishbait Solutions, we're an agency kind of about middle Americans, flyover states, tribes and lifestyles. We work in college sports. We work in country music. We work in hunting and fishing and other outdoor sports. We work in food festivals and tourism, and we work in American heritage. So that's what we do.
Well, let's start all the way from the beginning. You've been in it for a long time. How did you get into it? What kind of sports fan and music fan were you growing up?
You know, Matt, my whole life I knew I wanted to be a coach. That's all I ever wanted to be from the time that I started playing, Little League baseball, midget football. My dad was a coach, a youth coach, not a high school or college coach, but a youth coach. And I just loved coaching and loved sports and wanted to be a part of that. And I was blessed to be a high school basketball and soccer coach. And then not long after that became a head soccer and head basketball coach at the Division III level at the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee in my early 20s. A few years ago, I gave a speech at the Fuqua Business School at Duke, and one of their MBA students said, how do you go from being a college basketball coach to being a successful sports marketing executive? And I said, it's really a lot easier than you think. You just don't win any games. So
that's how you become faster. That's
exactly. So I was fortunate to go to graduate school after being at Sewanee. I went to graduate school at Georgia State and had a chance to do an internship at Georgia Tech under the legendary athletic director Homer Rice. And my direct boss was a guy named Norman Airy, who had been a newspaper man. And I thought I was going to stay in coaching, and I had got offered a Division I assistant's job. And when I went on my honeymoon, I picked up the paper, and the coach that had hired me had resigned. And I don't have a job. And I was fortunate that Dr. Rice at Tech said, hey, come be our marketing director and we'll get you a coaching job next year. And that was my fork in the road. I never went back. Worked at Tech for a couple of years, went to work for a PR firm in Atlanta, Conan Wolff, and then looked in the mirror one day, said I wasn't getting any younger, wasn't getting any smarter. Might as well do this on my own. And in 1987, went out on my own and have been a serial entrepreneur, have had a number of agencies from that time, but have basically worked for myself in the sports and entertainment business for the last, 35 years.
Yeah, I actually was just in Durham for a wedding this past weekend. Beautiful campus over at Duke.
There's a great story. There's a great story. There was Duke was really, the money at Duke came from the Duke Tobacco Company. And at that time, Wake Forest was not in Winston-Salem. They were in a little bitty town called Wake Forest, North Carolina. In fact, later they relocated to Winston-Salem because R.J. Reynolds wanted their own college because their competitor Duke and Philip Morris had Duke University. But when Wake Forest was in Wake Forest, they had a football coach named P. Head Walker. He would bring people down from the coal belt, from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Southern Ohio, and he would show them Duke's campus, show them that chapel at Duke. Then when they got off the train in Wake Forest, they're like, where's that church I saw? Because there was nothing in Wake Forest, North Carolina at that time. So it's a great story about the Duke Chapel recruiting football players to Wake Forest.
Yeah, I had a funny story like that. I went to Key West and I booked this like Airbnb type rental thing. And I get there and I'm like, well, where's the pool? It turns out this guy has a photograph of his next door neighbor's pool on the website. I was like, yeah, you can't do that. If I'm looking for a pool, I want a pool. So anyway, it was
yeah. Well, that's better than looking for a chapel that doesn't exist on your college campus. So yeah.
Yeah. So you got into it on your own, and talk about the change of the climate of college sports from when you started till, let's just even say, a year ago, because now the change in the last couple years has been, I don't even know what word to just, outrageous. I don't know. How would you even describe the change that's going on now? And then let's talk about, how different it is from when you first started.
Well, I think it's been unprecedented. At the same time, you have to realize that there have been significant issues in college athletics over the years historically. I kind of tend to think of myself as a sports sociologist. I like to watch and go back and wonder what was going on at the turn of the century, not this century, but the last century, in the early 1900s. They had started playing college football, and they had a thing called the flying wedge. And in 1905, a whole bunch of college football players got killed playing college football. And at the time, the president of the United States was a guy by the name of Teddy Roosevelt, who was very active as an athlete and really believed in sport. But he knew they had to fix something, and he got a group together around college football. And out of that came the NCAA. They created the NCAA to keep student athletes safe in college football. So you had that transformational change. Then you went through an era post-Second World War. So many soldiers came back from the Second World War and went to school on the GI Bill. And as part of the GI Bill, so many of them played college football and college basketball and college sports. And so you had an amazing heyday of college athletics in the 1950s. And it remained kind of the same up until the NCAA had controlled the television rights to college football. In that era, you could be on TV one time a year. So can you imagine if you're Notre Dame and you get one bite of the apple, you get to be on, the NCAA tells you can be on TV one time a year. Well, University of Georgia and Oklahoma collectively sued the NCAA for restraint of trade. And ultimately, Georgia and Oklahoma won that, and that opened up the modern era of college football. You couple that with the intersection of a 24-hour sports network that some people said nobody would watch sports 24 hours. But you saw that ESPN came on board, and suddenly you had this amazing growth of college football and college basketball. Dave Gavitt, who's a good friend, who was a great coach at Providence, became the commissioner of the Big East, and Dave used ESPN largely to grow a basketball league that did not exist before, that became the power league in all of college basketball. And so you had this tremendous growth of college basketball and college football, largely on the back of ESPN, but largely based on deregulation of media. And so you saw so many more television entities get involved with broadcasting college football, college basketball, even women's basketball, some baseball. And so college sports is rolling along, just doing fine. But there were a lot of, it's kind of like being on a lake, and it's just beautiful, but you don't see the landmines
on the
below.
Bottom,
Yeah, or you're on the Titanic and you see a little bit of ice. You don't see what's below last year, it all came home to roost. All the problems in college athletics hit at the same time. So you had a combination of COVID-19. You had Black Lives Matter. You had transfer portal. You had name, image, and likeness. You had financial force majeure issues. You had reduced monies paid because of an insurance policy in March Madness. You just had the perfect storm. Any of those would have been a Category 1. You put all those together and you end up with a Category 5. You had a catastrophic situation in college sports, and it really exposed a lot of the problems that we had. Problem number one is it's a terrible business model. It's uniquely American. It does so many great things. But if you were going to start a business, you wouldn't say, hey, I think I'll start a business that one of my products makes money, one of my products breaks even, and 20 other products lose money. Well, that's college athletics. Football basically pays all the bills. In most cases, men's basketball breaks even and everything else loses money. So it's a bad model. That's number one. Number two, it's a model that you spend everything every year. So it's a zero-sum game. I'm going to raise all this money. I'm going to spend it. And next year, I'm going to start back at zero again. And, once you cancel a season, that was bad because you still had to pay bills and no income coming in at all. No television rights income, no ticket sales income, very little licensed product income, no donations income. You had a problem with that. So you had
but
a couple things.
The top schools, it's hard for them to cry wolf. They were the top schools, which it's not a huge group, but maybe there's 10 or 20 of them are still. It's not that they lost a ton of money necessarily; they just didn't gain all the money that they maybe would have.
No, almost everybody lost money. I mean, it's all pretty relative. Even if you're a monster, if you're Ohio State or Clemson or Georgia or Florida, Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas, you got a budget of $100 million, and if you only brought in $20 million, you got an $80 million loss. So every school was in a position where they had to go borrow money, and they also had to make significant changes in reducing staff and reducing expenditures and doing a number of things along those lines. And so you had that problem. The second problem that quickly became clear is that in the reconfiguration of conferences, largely chasing television households. And so if you look at all the expansion, it was about grabbing new states and new television households. That worked really well in an old format where you had affiliates like cable operators and DirecTV and Dish. But in an unbundled direct-to-consumer world, suddenly states are no longer important and cable operator fees were no longer important. And you woke up one day and said, if I'm West Virginia, I chased money by going to the Big 12. Well, my golf team's got to play in Lubbock too. And my track team's got to play in Waco, Texas. And my women's volleyball team's got to play in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I think ADs woke up to how much money they were spending in travel for non-revenue producing sports. And it was, pretty significant. So you had that issue. The other issue that really became exposed is we've got issues with fans. My generation, I'm a baby boomer. We love college athletics. We flock to college athletics. The problem is we're of an age where a lot of us are starting to die, and it's bad when your fan base dies off. It's just not a good thing. If you don't believe that, ask Cadillac. Cadillac was the number one luxury automobile in America, and then all their owners died, and it didn't work out real well for them. So it's exposed that a lot of young people are not consuming college football and college basketball the way other generations have. I've got some theories on that. One is I think we had a couple of generations of kids that got really, really bad tickets, didn't have a great experience, and got charged outrageous student activity fees that supported athletics at a number of schools. And then you're wondering why they're not coming back. They didn't have a great collegiate experience. Secondly, you've got short attention spans. You've got ever-connected Gen Zers. You've got millennials that have small children. You've got a lot of issues that are affecting fans. I watched a little bit of the UCLA-Hawaii game. You could have shot off a cannon in the Rose Bowl and not killed anybody. I mean, nobody was there. Nobody cared. That's a problem. If fans are not, after a year of not being there, if fans are not eager to come back, we may have a bigger problem than we thought. So we've got a lot of unintended consequences that I don't know if the final chapter has been written. What does NIL mean? I think the combination of NIL and transfer portal means the strong are going to get stronger and the weak are going to get weaker. It's kind of like our society, isn't it? I'm going to give you an example, just an example. Dan Mullen, your head football coach at Florida, several years ago, he finds a quarterback nobody ever heard of by the name of Dak Prescott. And he signs him at Mississippi State. Dak has an amazing sophomore year. I think in today's environment, he would not have stayed at Mississippi State. I think at that point, somebody else in the SEC would have said Georgia or Tennessee or Alabama, Auburn, LSU. Somebody would have said, you're not going to win a national championship here, but come here, transfer here, and you got a shot at winning a national championship and a Heisman Trophy. And oh, by the way, I have this car dealership in my town, and he's going to pay you $1 million to come here. That's where we are. I mean, it is the wild freaking West.
But I mean, how did this sneak up on them? This started in '96 with the O'Bannons, right? I mean, this is not something that they didn't know was coming, and they feel it seems like they were caught off guard by it. With no real, I guess, no real rules that are uniform and any rules that you can actually enforce anyway. Forget about, you can put whatever rules you want in place, but are you going to be able to enforce them? And are they going to care to enforce them?
Well, one of my favorite sayings is, remember, denial is more than a river in Egypt. Yeah. I think a lot of them just kicked the can down the road and hoped that they were at the beach before they got caught. I mean, we saw all this coming. And now I will say this, Mark Few wrote a very eloquent letter to the Mark Few's the basketball coach at Gonzaga. He wrote a very elegant letter to the California state legislators that congratulated them for passing a law, an NIL law that affected 0.0001% of the population in California instead of fixing all the other problems in California. We knew it was coming. We have treated players maybe unfairly. At the same time, we've done a bad job of articulating how the ecosystem works. Number one, John Beeline's a friend of mine, great basketball coach. He said when he was at Michigan that if you had stayed all 4 years at Michigan between room, board, books, training table, Hawaii trip, first class seats, one European trip during your 4-year period, all the things that go into that, you would have gotten the equivalent of $2 million in value. We've said that doesn't matter. We need to be playing players. The problem is this. Everybody thinks that colleges, when they hear all this money, and part of the problem is coaches' salaries, obviously. Coaches make so much money. But everybody thinks that all this money that the students earn goes into somebody's pocket. And that's a myth. All that money gets reinvested back in sports that don't make money. So if you're paying your quarterback a stipend, that means you may have 4 swimming scholarships you can't offer. There's only so much money in the ecosystem. It's our fault in college athletics for not communicating that effectively. We lost the conversation. We lost the platform to say all of the good things that come out of college athletics. At the same time, we did exploit kids. In college basketball, a lot of black kids, 4 years in, they're no closer to a degree than a first grader because they hide them, they give them in classes that are meaningless to keep them eligible. And so it was a form of the plantation system. We're going to expose you, we're going to use you, and then we're going to spit you out. And so I think some good things will come out of this. I think commissioners and ADs are now saying, what can we do post eligibility for students to make sure they earn a meaningful degree, to make sure we get them in a jobs program, to make sure they have health insurance? Can we do a bridge to the future better so that we're not in the exploitation business?
And could they put together like a pension where people can't touch it until they're done?
Oh, I think there's all kinds of things can do that. Our CEO, Rob Temple here at Fishbait, he calls it the player's trust. He says their algorithms right now can measure the value. Starting quarterback at Clemson's value is different than a fencer at North Carolina. And then you can earn shares in that and have a pool of money that you have later on. I mean, there's other mechanisms. I'm just disappointed that we waited to the last minute and then you panic and then you make sloppy mistakes and you do things, maybe hoping the federal government's going to bail you out. You remember, I quoted Ronald Reagan early in this conversation. Reagan once said, the scariest thing in the world was the sound of, hello, I'm with the federal government and I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do in college athletics. We're waiting on the federal government to bail us out with some sort of consistent NIL legislation. Really? Has it come to that?
Yeah.
But obviously it has.
So you talk about West Virginia going to the Big 12. What does that say about Oklahoma and Texas knowing that that's a situation they have to deal with and coming to the SEC where there's no real good way to align because it's got to be football to align the SEC without really disrupting what the SEC is?
Well, in fairness to the SEC, that was a brilliant move. I mean, for a couple of reasons. You got two marquee programs joining, arguably the best football conference in the country. They're also pretty darn good in baseball and women's softball and track and field and men's basketball and women's basketball. I mean, they're great programs. They are Southern oriented, states, both Oklahoma and Texas. They kind of fit the geographic piece in a way. Where I think we're heading is back to my direct-to-consumer model. Everything's going to come through your smartphone. And ultimately, I think you're going to see individual schools under an SEC umbrella have their own digital networks. And you'll have the marquee games on, ESPN, ABC, but you'll have other games, other sports on subscription-based model. And I think ultimately you'll see big schools move to a strong subscription-based communications model to have products that people will pay on a monthly basis for things like coaches' shows or coaches' morning welcome message or practices or field hockey games, soccer games, gymnastics meets and those kinds of things.
The disappointing thing for me is just cementing everything revolves around money and really football, which, the foundation of college sports and amateur athletics was contrary to that, right? There were people who couldn't make any money because they would lose their amateur status.
Well, my favorite movie scene of all time is the classic movie Casablanca, where the Claude Rains character who plays the French police officer comes into Rick's Cafe and goes, "I'm shocked to find gambling in this establishment." Right then the guy walks by and goes, "You're winning, sir." That's college athletics. We say, "I'm shocked to find all this kinds of stuff." Look, people are saying, "Oh my God, the SEC's rating people." At one time, Swanee was in the SEC. Tulane was in the SEC. Georgia Tech left the SEC to make more money because they thought the academic standards were different. All the schools that have gotten together in the alliance now, you're telling me they wouldn't have taken Texas and Oklahoma?
No, I think they would have. I'm just saying, with all this going on, I think the fan is the one who's going to miss out.
The fan. Clearly, we have forgotten that the fan is the bank. The fan is the sole bank. Somehow we feel like there's a big money tree in Jimmy Pitaro's office at ESPN, or suddenly there's a big money tree in your stadium. Suddenly there's a money tree at Fanatics. No. Fans pay for everything. If fans don't watch television, there are no rights fees. If fans don't come to the Swamp to watch the Gators play, there's no ticket sales. There's no merch sales. There's no popcorn sales. There's no donor names on buildings. There's no annuities, none of that. And I think we're rapidly getting to the point we forget. Now, here's the problem. Does that mean Oklahoma's not going to play Oklahoma State anymore? I mean, is that going to happen? We're not going to have Bedlam. I've seen it happen. Texas A&M went to the SEC and basically gave the finger to Texas and said, "We're not playing anymore." Fans wanted to see that rivalry. Fans want to see Missouri and Kansas play. They want to see Maryland and Duke playing basketball. And what's happened is we split up the ecosystem. We've forgotten about the fan. And guess what happens when you forget about the fan? Sometimes they forget about you. Yeah. I watched NASCAR as an example. I watched NASCAR go through a period where they said, we want to be more than Bubba. We want to be about hip hop. We want to be about mainstream. We want to be about New York and LA. We don't care about Bristol and Martinsville and Darlington and Rockingham and those places. Look what happened.
The fan said no.
Yeah, the guy stayed home and said, "I'll go fishing. I won't come back. They don't love me anymore." we better be careful about loving fans right now. And I'm not seeing a lot of love going on.
No, we're all about the fan experience here. I'm a fan. That's why I started the company. And I'm never not going to watch the Gators, but there is still we just talked about this before, this immeasurable data that they're going to get hurt somewhere, and they might not even know about it, but it's going to be happening. And it's sad. The whole thing with the conference is not everyone is a college. There's some people who don't care about college football, and they are huge basketball fans or baseball fans. And this whole alignment, I mean, gone are the days when Notre Dame could just sit there and say, I'm not going to join a conference. I'll play here for the ACC, and you're not going to be able to do that. And no one's going to have the power to do that. So it's an interesting time in college football. I still think it's great. I love it. I sit by the TV on Saturday and I watch. I'm going to games. I don't know that that'll ever change, but it still doesn't mean that the feeling towards it might not change. And so we'll see. You guys we'll transition to Fish Pit. You guys are all in on college football. Tell everybody about where you were this past weekend and what you guys are doing in the next coming weeks for the game.
Well, we're all in about fans. I mean, it starts with that. Again, I told you about being kind of a fan or sports sociologist. I'm a fan anthropologist. I mean, I want to know what makes fans tick. What brings a 35-year-old to a game and bring his 9-year-old son? What's that connect to tissue? And so we're constantly looking at ways to look at how we enhance the fan experience. Part of the problem is that big screen TV. That's a pretty good experience. If you don't like the game, you can find 9 others. Beers are in your refrigerator. You park free in your driveway. The bathroom's clean and 5 steps away. There's a lot of advantages for staying home, but that means we've got to make the live experience better than it's ever, ever, ever been. And that's what we're really about at Fishbait. We started last week. We've run a tour, Dollar General, Anheuser-Busch, Kellogg's, Clorox, number of sponsors. We run a tour called the ESPN Events Tailgate Tour that travels to great games each week. And it's basically what I call a 15-minute commercial. We have 8 interactive stations. Takes you about 15 minutes to play all of them. And hopefully you have a great brand experience. You get some prizes, get something to eat, have a good time. And so we go to games and we do that in the pregame. We never forget, they're not there to come to an activation. They're there to come to a football game. And so you got to be certain that you can get them in and get them out and get them on to where they want to go. Beef It's What's for Dinner is a sponsor. So we give them free grilled beef kebabs right off the grill with a little seasoning spice and barbecue sauce. We have a couple of wheels that you spin for prizes for Jewelry Television and Ticket Smarter. We've got a helmet program for roofclaim.com. We've got tailgate toss games, ring toss games. You have a chance to register for prizes. Quick and dirty, a lot of fun for fans, something for every age group, something for moms, something for dads, something for the kids. And so we've architecturally designed that to be in a good way. And we were fortunate to start Saturday at week 0 at one of the ESPN Events games, the MEAC SWAC Challenge, which was the game between North Carolina Central and Alcorn State, which was the 7:00 game on ESPN. And we were grateful that Game Day was there. Game Day, built by the Home Depot, showed up. It has been a tough year in race relations with the George Floyd situation, a lot of riots, a lot of social unrest. And this was such a positive day. I mean, Atlanta was not exempt from that. They had riots in Atlanta. They had a unfortunate police officer shooting of a unarmed man at a Wendy's that led to burnings and riots and stuff in Atlanta. This was the antithesis of all that. This was just joy. This was people glad to be back, people with their families. The historically Black colleges and universities have played a great role in America in educating African Americans for literally centuries now. And it was just a marvelous experience. And we were just delighted to be there. Now we start a tough road. We're going to be at 6 games in 6 days. We're going to be Wednesday night in Montgomery, Alabama for Jacksonville State and UAB. On Thursday night, we're going to be in.
Is that Dion?
No, that's Jackson State, not Jacksonville State.
Oh, Jacksonville State, right.
Yeah. On Thursday night, we're going to be in Charlotte at one of the Duke's Mayonnaise Kickoff Classics. This is East Carolina and Appalachian State. On Friday night, we'll be in Blacksburg, Virginia for a great ACC opener, North Carolina and Virginia Tech. On Saturday, back to Charlotte for Clemson, Georgia, which is arguably the best game of the day. On Sunday, we're heading back to Montgomery for the Red Tails Classic, which is named for the Tuskegee Airmen, another historically black matchup between Fort Valley State and Tuskegee. And we'll finish that part of the tour on Monday night back in Atlanta at the Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic between Ole Miss and Louisville. So we're going to be pretty busy over the next week. And then Saturday in Atlanta, we have a client, T-Mobile, that is a new SEC official. We've brokered a concert for them with our client, Sony Music, and Old Dominion. So Old Dominion will play a free concert before the kickoff in the Fan Fest outside before the kickoff of the Alabama-Miami game. You may have heard recently the new soundtrack of the SEC. It's Luke Combs' song called South On Ya. We brokered that deal between Luke, Sony Music, SEC, ESPN, the SEC Network. And last but not least, we sold Good Sam, part of the Camping World family, 2 entitlements on Saturday for the Texas Kickoff Classic, the Good Sam Texas Kickoff Classic, and the Good Sam Las Vegas Classic. One in Houston, Texas Tech, Houston, and then one in Vegas, Arizona, BYU. So our fingerprints are all over opening. Last week was week 0. This is week 1. So
it's kind of insulting to the teams that played this past week.
Yeah.
Week 0. Nebraska kind of, maybe they felt that and they just kind of said,
You know what's interesting about that, Matt? I'm a big Scott Frost fan. I think he is a very good football coach. He's the same coach that took Central Florida to a 13-0 record. But here's the truth today, maybe more than ever before. It's not the X's and O's. It's the Jimmy and Joes. And he ain't got any players in Nebraska. They got no speed. Nebraska, in my opinion, and again, I'm giving you a lot of opinions today, never should have left the Big 12. Because when they were in the Big 12, they recruited heavily in Texas. You could tell a mama in Texas, hey, we're going to be down here and play 4 games a year. You can see your son play. They've lost that pipeline to Texas, and that's really hurt them from a recruiting standpoint, especially at the skill positions. But I could have wept for them. I mean, they lost by 8, but they got an interception that they called what I thought was a bad roughing the passer. You know, I mean, the quarterback might as well wear a petticoat from now on. I mean, if you hit them, it's a penalty. A bad, which could have maybe they were up 7-2. They may have gone on down there and led 14. Right before the half, Martinez fumbles the ball. They have a scoop and score, and so they're just snake bit under Scott Frost right now. But the natives are restless.
Right, his whatever recruiting violation isn't going to help. You know, when you're winning,
I'm sure. Yeah, it's just a tough time. But I remember a few years ago, I got up on Sunday morning on my way to church, and I heard Lou Holtz on satellite radio on Sirius. He said, the darndest thing happened in college football yesterday. Half the teams lost. And you think about it, and you go, you're right. Half the teams lost. And you're always going to have fans that are happy and fans that are unhappy, and it's usually based on wins and losses. And, Scott Frost is still the same good coach that he was before. He's just had a long string of bad luck.
Well, I saw a funny photo on it was photoshopped on Twitter about the NCAA put a thing on like everyone has a chance for the championship and the playoffs, and it's like, no, there's maybe 10 or 20 teams that have a realistic shot. So think about like what are they playing for? They know they're not going to win, so what are they playing for? And what does success mean to them? Certain teams have different levels of success. Some want to just go to a bowl game. Some maybe want to play in the conference title. Nebraska isn't the Nebraska that I grew up knowing. That 1995 team for me, for my money, was the best college football team I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I think they were kind of on the downslide before they left. It's interesting, these teams like Penn State, who's had some success, even Notre Dame, who's made playoffs, but they get a lot more in my opinion, which is, look, we love to give our opinions on college athletics. I don't know why Notre Dame deserves all the love, other than that they've had a great history and they're, it's an experience to go to Notre Dame, which I haven't been to. My brother has, but they're just one of the darlings of college football. The same way the Cowboys are the darlings of the NFL, and it kind of just stuck with them.
Well, that happens. One of my concerns right now is, you mentioned the lack of parity. We've had 7 BCS. 7 years of the CFP with the Final Four. 20 out of the 28 schools. There have only been 28 schools, and 20 of them have been the same schools. So you only had 8 new schools in there. So that's bad. It's crowded at the pinnacle. It's crowded at the top with very few people, but it's the same people. If you finish first in the NFL, you draft last. If you finish first in the NCAA, you draft first. You're just reloading. You're going to get the top 10 kids that you wanted because you've been winning. And I'm really worried about that. And then you marry that with the transfer portal. It's really affecting college basketball. Tubby Smith's a great friend of mine, great basketball coach. He's now back at his alma mater at High Point College, High Point University in High Point, North Carolina. He had 2 great kids coming back. He's built a great program. They both transferred to bigger schools. It's
probably the worst rule in college athletics. Even when it was just a graduate transfer rule, it was still BS, because everyone was like, okay, you just find a class that they don't offer here.
Well, but part of it is the hypocrisy. I sign you as a coach and I jump to another school. I could do that. You couldn't do that. So I understand it. But it's going to be hard for a mid-major to do what Gonzaga's done, to build something special, and that's going to be impossible. I don't worry about Florida or Georgia or Alabama or LSU, but I worry about Ole Miss. I worry about Kentucky. I worry about South Carolina. Can they be competitive in an SEC that adds Texas and Oklahoma? I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think all of this stuff is only going to help the Gators, and I hate most of it. So it's more about like what I think is going to be for overall. Because is it going to help us win any more championships? Maybe it will. I don't know. It'll make it. Some things will be more interesting, but I just think it's a terrible rule. It's free agency. It's the same thing you talked about. Comparing the NFL to college. And one thing I always compare in talking about the playoff is, we can't go to 6 teams. You can't give a college team a bye when there's no real basis for that bye. It's just a matter of opinion that they're one of the top 2 teams and they should get that bye. In NFL, you have a bye. They earned it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, back to Rob Temple, our CEO. When he was at ESPN, he was kind of the architect of the original CFP plan, and they didn't adopt his architecture all the way. He wanted a 9-team playoff. And if you think about it, you would have an 8-9 play-in. Okay. And so that gives Cinderella a chance.
Yeah.
And then and you do that the same weekend as the Army-Navy. So it's the week after the conference championships. You play that 8-9 game. Last year, the 8-9 game would have been Coastal Carolina Liberty.
They played.
That ended up playing in the Cure Bowl and having an amazing game. But in that playoff scenario, the winner of that would have gone to Alabama to play. Nobody gets a bye. But the top 4 seeds do get to host at home, because you can't play another round of neutral site games. Fans can't afford to go. If you're a Gator fan, you can't go to the SEC championship, and you just can't. You don't have enough money or time. But if the Gators could host a game, that's pretty cool. And so now you have a 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. And you play those as a doubleheader on Friday and Saturday nights before Christmas. So you're in a really good economic window of a lot of pre-Christmas money. Then I think you're on to something that may be better. 12 teams. I heard Condoleezza Rice speak the other day. She was on the original CFP committee. And she said, look, they're not 12 teams that can win the national championship. We're kidding ourselves. And nobody wants to see someone get beat 38-0.
Well, meanwhile, they get that in the college football playoff. Every time
Right.
Notre Dame's in there, they get beat by 30.
Right. And so there's some issues. At the same time, we all love a Cinderella. I mean, what we love about March Madness, if you look, usually by the time you get to the Final Four, it's gone pretty chalk. Yeah. But that first weekend, that Thursday, Friday, David beating Goliath, we can't wait to see that. We don't have that in college football at all. That's why I love that 8-9 play-in, and then give them a shot at a number one team. They may get killed, but it's kind of the American way. Give everybody a shot in a way that
I like it.
Works.
Yeah. I like it. I just, for me, a bye would just destroy any credibility, because you're just arguing like, I think Alabama's better than this team, but I don't know.
Right, I agree. I don't like buys. I
schedules, all of that.
Yeah, that's unfair to teams that have to play an extra game. I mean, an extra week of getting beat up while the other team's sitting home getting well. I think I don't like that either. But I do like expanding it to where if you're in there are a couple of great teams in the Sun Belt this year. Jamie Chadwell has a great team coming back at Coastal Carolina, and the team down at Louisiana Lafayette is really, really, really good. Yeah. But Billy Napier's got a great team. They open with Texas Saturday at Texas. Texas beware. They opened up last year at Iowa State, a very good Iowa State team that went on to win the regular season Big 12 championship, and they waxed them. They went up to Ames and beat them pretty badly. I want those teams, if they run the table, to have a chance, just a chance. I guess I'm like Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber, so there's a chance.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should in football. Why not? I mean, What are they afraid of? I think they're afraid that they're going to win a game and it might water down their tournament.
Well, I don't know. But
did you see the Sun Belt photo? The guy at game day, he had like the Florida fans were killing him. He had Florida be fourth in the Sun Belt or something like that. Oh, he got creamed on Twitter. It was still pretty funny. I love that stuff.
Yeah, there were some really fun moments on game day. My favorite was Aflac is a new sponsor of game day, and they had a feature with the bear. The bear does the picking of the games, and he had the live Aflac duck who just messed all over the set. I mean, just it was TV at its finest. I thought Herb Street was going to fall out of his chair. He was laughing so hard.
I think they got a good thing going there. I want to talk about music and sports, the intersection of entertainment. You guys are a big part of that in college, country, and the NFL. You had Carrie Underwood and who was the original Monday Night Football?
Faith Hill.
Who was the guy?
Hank Williams Jr.
Yeah, Hank Williams Jr. So you have a history of country music and college football. It's the South. It just makes sense. And then to have the concerts, I was at the Final Four, one of the worst experiences I've ever been to, because the Gators lost the first game. I could have sworn they were going to win the whole thing. The next day, Bruce Springsteen and Fun had a free concert. It made my whole weekend. I was at the Field of Dreams game, nothing like that, which was very surprising to me. Like, bring someone there and do a concert. So having that concert experience in front of these big games, which, that is the opener in these type of one-off games, is pretty important. And it's great to see country getting on there, which a lot of people are like, maybe I'm not a country fan. Are we going to see some more country people at a Super Bowl type of halftime performance? Are they not mainstream enough? Someone like a Luke Bryan?
Well, I think they are. I mean, I think Eric Church and Luke Bryan and, Blake Shelton is a TV star on The Voice. I mean, I think you got big stars that you mentioned, Carrie Underwood, that can carry a Super Bowl show or something. But again, a lot of times the Super Bowl is trying to reach a different type of audience, a broad audience. And especially in the South, it's largely a country audience. As part of that, you mentioned the Field of Dreams game, which I thought was brilliant. If you had one do-over, I would have had John Fogerty sing center field. That would have been a great way to kind of stitch it together. We really believe that this intersection of sport, music, and food is where it's at. As you know, in our neck of the woods, we love our tailgating. And that's a big part of the college football experience. Then you add the musical element. And we're looking at maybe next year doing a series of Friday night concerts before big Saturday games. Because,
idea.
We're talking – schools realize we need to turn game day into a weekend of activities in order to drive more revenue and more engagement. And, if you could come to, Gainesville, and that night you're going to have somebody play a concert. Sister Hazel, aren't they a Gainesville band? Yeah, somebody like that play Friday night, and everybody have a good time. Kind of combine it with a pep rally, have a good time, and do that. Or somebody playing in the Fan Fest, before the game. I think you've got to look to up the entertainment value of being able to do that. Luke Combs wrote this song Southonia a couple of years ago and kind of put it on the shelf. And then when we heard it, we were like, whoa, my goodness, this is SEC football. And we were fortunate he went back and rewrote some of the lyrics to make sure all the teams are included. And I think it's going to be like Coming to Your City is for game day. I think it's going to be a standard.
Big and Rich? Is that Big and Rich did that? Yeah, I love that song.
That was originally 3 years. I think they're in year 12 or something with that. I mean, it's perfect. And we're hoping Southonia is going to be that kind of anthem. Again, people love music. They love barbecue, and they love college football. They all go together.
I love tailgating. It's one of my favorite things to do. I almost only go to game, like for the Marlins. If I can't tailgate, I go to way less games than I could if I just camp out, grill some stuff on a Saturday for 3-4 hours, hang out with my friends, have a drink. I was not a country music fan until Tortuga Music Festival came here on the beach, and Sister Hazel and Michael Fronte played two non-country bands. It was $99 for 2 days on the beach. I was like, I'll pay $99 to see anybody for 2 days on the beach. And I haven't missed a day of Tortuga since. I'm a huge country music fan. Was real disappointed that Kenny Chesney and Old Dominion Florida Georgia Line got canceled over in Nashville. What is your favorite tailgating atmosphere in college football?
Well, I mean, the Grove at Ole Miss is unlike anything else. I mean, for years, Ole Miss's tagline was "We never lost a party," and the truth is, they never have. I mean, the Grove is, it's the only place I know you can get a drink in a pewter cup and under chandeliers and on fine china. I mean, it's just very, very special. You've got multiple generations. You got grandmamas that don't even go in the game. They take care of the grandbabies and the bassinets while everybody else goes to the game. It's just, people still dress up. The girls in skirts and dresses, and the guys kind of dressed. And it's just a real genteel, really unique atmosphere that I like. At the same time, I mentioned Louisiana Lafayette. They're so hospitable, the Cajuns. And you go there, they got gumbo and boudin and crawfish etouffee. And I mean, they got a whole different setup, po' boys and they're just such great fans. I mean, you walk in, you don't even know anybody, and they'll go, "Boy, get over here and get you some gumbo." And they mean it. I mean, they're really, really good to the visiting fans. And so that's a great experience. You mentioned Notre Dame. It's unlike any place I've been. You just feel the ghost. I mean, it's just, it's special. They got, I think 12 fight songs, and, they got all the history, and, you go to the grotto and light a candle, and you go into the chapel, touchdown Jesus, the team walk. It's the most gorgeous campus. There's no graffiti. There's no, trash on the grounds. It's special. And have that just great tradition. And if you know the history of Notre Dame, this was a school that was created to serve poor, big city Catholic immigrants. It was formed for Cleveland and Chicago and St. Louis and the big cities that largely had Irish and Poles and German immigrants that were Catholics. And they put it in this middle of nowhere, South Bend, Indiana. and it's a special place. And I can't argue against the tradition there. It's pretty special.
So I go to an away Gator football game every year, and I got screwed twice with Ole Miss. The first year, Texas A&M joined the SEC, and they bumped the game, which means it's a decade, 12 years later. Texas A&M, the nicest people I've ever met at a tailgate. Just if you can get a chance to go to College Station, it's a fun tailgate. Really, really nice people.
They're great fans too. The parade of the core. When you watch, the ROTC program there is so strong. When the core marches in, it's a piece of Americana unlike anything I've ever seen. And their band is unbelievable with all the formations they make and all the things that they do. And of course, their cheerleaders are men. They call them yell leaders, and that goes back way back. It's very special too.
Yeah. So then last year we were going to play at Ole Miss again, and I was going to go, but COVID happened. They actually played the game, which I was kind of disappointed a little bit because without fans, without tailgating, without going to restaurants and bars, that ruins my whole environment for going to the away game. So I said, you know what, it's not worth it for me. I'll probably have to grab a non-Gator game at the Grove sometime. But the Gators have some. I think we're going to Oklahoma and Colorado and Arizona State. So looking forward to seeing some other environments. It's I'm not a fan of the new tailgate thing. The tailgate, is it Tailgate Tom or that they do outside? And it's like
Tailgate Guys.
Yeah, it's like glamping to me.
Well, again, that generation, they're appealing to Gen Z and largely millennials that don't want to go to the trouble of packing it all up and bringing it. They want the convenience, and many of them are Ubering to the game. They're not even bringing their car. They want to hang out with their friends. They want the convenience. And so I think we have to be sensitive to the different needs of different fan segments, and I think they serve that. Me, I'm the opposite. I like to plan my menu. I like to cook. I like tailgating to be meaningful for my friends. I'm trying to bring something maybe they haven't had before, and enjoy that kind of thing. But that doesn't make me right and them wrong. I
agree. I agree with that.
I think you're going to have both kinds of experiences. My good friend Ben Sutton owns Tailgate Guys, and they're doing a terrific job. There's you got to go to Texas to a game. Chris Del Conte, 3 years ago, they created a thing called Bevo Boulevard. That's amazing. I mean, it is an amazing pregame fan fest. And then they have Smokies Midway, that is a place that has for kids with carnival games and rides and all that stuff. Then they have Longhorn City Limits, like Austin City Limits, with music, pregame music, great acts, historically Austin acts. But they have the largest Tailgate Guys. Again, they're in an urban setting. There's not a lot of real estate to tailgate. Yeah. And so they've taken advantage of that by creating Tailgate Guys there in a really beautiful wooded area near the stadium.
My friends have in Gainesville. It's prime location. It's right in front of the stadium. My friends have a booth. When you're there for the Bama game, you'll come by and have something to eat and a drink. I also have a tailgate with my friends who start at 7 a.m. at a different location and kind of, do their own thing. So I'm more of a fan of the old school stuff, but I do get it, and it's a good environment for the people who want to come around and do that. I love Austin, Texas. I haven't been to a game yet, but I've been to the stadium. So hopefully Gators will play at Texas sooner than later as they enter the SEC.
Yeah, it's a great, Memorial Stadium there. I guess that's the Darrell Royal Memorial Stadium, and I think the field is now named for Earl Campbell. It's pretty special too. I mean, it's everybody's in burnt orange. It's I'm fortunate that I've been to, I want to say, as many as 80 stadiums.
Crazy.
Like you around the country. We try to pick out places we've never been before and go to places. And I've enjoyed every place I've been. All of them are unique, have their own traditions, their own set of mores, and college football is just part of our life. We lived in London for 3 years, and my wife still refers to those 3 years as the 3 years I deprived her of college football. So I obviously married the right woman.
Yeah, no, that sounds. What's on your bucket list?
I haven't been to Camp Randall at Wisconsin. I can't believe I haven't been there, but I haven't, and I want to go for jump around. I haven't been to Michigan State. That's another place I want to go. I haven't been to Iowa. That's a place I want to go. Believe it or not, I've never been to the Coliseum in Los Angeles. So I'd like to go see Southern Cal play there. But there are not many. I'm running out of spaces. But I've been to small college stadiums that I've really enjoyed. I went to Yale a few years ago, which is a very large stadium, the Yale Bowl, with not a lot of fans, but it was a really special place to be. It was the 100th year of the Yale Bowl, and
there you go.
It was neat. It was cool.
We were at Colorado State's a nice little stadium too.
Yes.
Collins. Camp Randall was unbelievable. We were there. They were playing Utah State, and when that jump around comes, I mean, the whole stadium just shakes. And Utah State missed a field goal that would have beat Wisconsin. They got out of there by the skin of their teeth. It was a great environment. Night game, definitely worth getting to. So hopefully you'll get there. Do you have someone who you identify as the greatest college football player you've seen, or maybe the greatest team? I said it was Nebraska '95, the best team that you've seen. You've watching a little bit more longer than I have. The best college football player, or maybe your favorite.
Well, Bo Jackson, maybe he's the greatest athlete I ever saw. I mean, I was at Georgia Tech. I was in my first job as the marketing director, and we were going to play them in Atlanta. I printed up a whole bunch of buttons that said "Bo No Go," and I think we held him to about 90 yards in the first half, and I think the second half he had about 390 yards or something. I mean, the guy was I've never seen an athlete. I mean, he's probably the best bow hunter in the country. I mean, the guy's just a gifted athlete, great basketball player, and he played in the big leads. First at an All-Star game.
He's dyslexic.
Yeah, oh yeah, very much so. Had a stuttering problem, but I told a joke. Or Gary McKee was an old announcer in Atlanta on 94Q at the time. He was kind of the biggest morning show personality, and I remember that pep rally that we had before the Auburn game. This was to tell you how old I am. This was in 1985, and he told a story. He said that, he interviewed Bo, and Bo said, my real name's not Bo. He said, but the Auburn fans can't pronounce my real name, so I had to shorten it to Bo. He said, well, what is your real name? He said, Bob. That's my favorite Auburn joke. But he may have been the best player, the best team. Wow.
Keep talking. I'm going to show you something before we go. Keep talking.
That Nebraska team that beat Florida for the championship, because I thought that Florida team was a great team. I thought I love this. The Mount Rushmore of
my Mount Rushmore. Players. I got Ken Griffey, Bo, Elway, Dale Ellis.
Yeah, that's great. You didn't ask me about basketball players. Michael Jordan was my favorite player ever in the NBA, but he was not my favorite college player. In fact, he wasn't my favorite North Carolina college player. I thought Phil Ford at North Carolina was a better college basketball player than Michael Jordan, and I thought David Thompson and Len Bias were both better college basketball players. David Thompson was the best college basketball player I ever saw. And Len Bias, if you wanted to say God build a body for basketball, he had the body. The tragedy of him dying, it would have been amazing what he might have done in the NBA. He was a great player. But we've had great players at so many different generations, and I like the old guys. I like old coaches. I like old players. It's just part of the generational connectivity. Mr. Two Bits, at Florida, that's special. Singing "We Are the Boys," that's special. That's multi-generational. That's people locking arm in arm and doing that. That's what college football is really about. It's about that shared experience.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm excited for college football to be back. It's a great week to start. Excited for you to in the tailgate tour. I'll see you in Gainesville. We'll share a drink or something to eat. Looking forward to that. So we'll get you out of here on the same question we get everyone else out of here on. You have one day to spend with someone. They have to be alive. You can't be related to them. They could be anybody in the world. Who are you picking, and what are you guys going to do?
Wow. Can't be related, so it can't be my bride. One person I'm going to spend that. I think I would probably spend the day. I really like Mike Krzyzewski. He's a guy I really, really like and enjoy. And, Mike doesn't play tennis anymore. He got kind of a bad hip, but that would be a really fun day just to play tennis with Mike and talk about just life and Italian wine and, just good times and teams. And Mike's has such great appreciation for the game, for the old guys that coached before him. And I think that'd be the guy I'd hang out with.
Just a remarkable career. We're going to put him on the list. We'll do some outreach. He's got some more time now.
Right? Yeah, he does. I want to get Roy and Mike to do a show. A few years ago, Joe Hall and Denny Crum did a show together in Kentucky after they had both retired that was just hilarious and big fun. I think Roy and Mike doing a show on the ACC network could be outstanding. Number one, everybody would come on. They'd get all the guests they want. They could really have a great time, and they're both big pals. They both raised a lot of money for the V Foundation. They've both done a lot of great stuff, and I think that could be really, really, really a lot of fun. Yeah, I wanted to say one more thing, Matt. You see behind me, I got all my stuff. I'm like you.
What your favorite memorabilia is?
Yeah, I'm a collector, and I got cabinets in here with all my memorabilia. I've got a gigantic stand with all my credentials over here.
If you can only take one with you, what are you taking?
Oh my goodness. I have a ball signed by John Wooden.
Oh wow.
That's probably I'm taking that. I'll leave the will. It could burn up. I'm taking my wooden ball. So
look, really, it's great chat. We can talk college anytime in sports. Check out Fishbait Solutions if your brand needs a boost, if you want some fresh new ideas, if you want to get involved in sports and music and food and all that good stuff. Fishbaitsolutions.com. We didn't even get to talk about your podcast, but check out From the Bridge podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Great guests, great stories, and we'll have you on again, and we'll talk about all the stuff we didn't get to. But looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks, and hopefully you have a great time with the 5 days, 6 games in 6 days. Incredible for you, incredible for the fans. We got Jarrett Reddick of Bowling for Soup, speaking of music, on the Wolff Den tomorrow. So tune in, have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, pal. Go Gators.
Go Gators. Love it.